for president. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders announcing officially yesterday that he's going to throw his hat into the ring for the Democratic nomination. How does that work? I thought he was an independent. What happened? But yes, excitement all over the progressive blowout. They've all been waiting for. But closer. Good morning. Welcome to the Bill Press Show on this Friday, May 1st, 2019. From Progress. Happy to be with you today in what has become really a tradition. A candidate announces for president, and then I host the show. We've done it with Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
I think maybe Rand Paul.
Yeah.
And now for Bernie Sanders. And I have to say, this is probably the most exciting of those two. Oh, Rubio. We did it with Rubio, too, with Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
And here we are. And the question, look, it's interesting. Ted Cruz announced, and you had a whole media spectacle. He had a big event at Liberty University, huge coverage. Bernie announces, well, you got some other stuff going on, I suppose, in Baltimore and elsewhere, but it's not nearly the same. Only on this show will you get the same kind of equal treatment for Bernie Sanders that you do for people like Ted Cruz. And if you weigh who has the better chance of winning, I mean, that's a different argument altogether.
A good point,
by the way, our number here, 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-PRESS, the Bill Press Show. We're at BP Show on Twitter.
That's it, yes,
yeah,
sir.
and on Facebook, we're at /Bill Press Show.
You got it.
You could be listening to us on the iHeartRadio app, which is a great app to hear this thing on. The Progressive Voices app using the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel.
That's it. You got it.
Got it. Finally, it is a Friday.
It is a Friday. Happy
and
Friday.
Thank God, happy Friday.
Woohoo!
Or of course on your favorite progressive radio station. Got the whole team here. Peter Ogburn in studio
Hey,
with
buddy.
me. Hey, Lo. Good morning.
Good to see you.
Elisa Murphy running the board. Alicia
Hey,
Cruz
good morning.
taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS. And Cyprian Bolding running our video cam so that you can see us at youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKR.
TAWKR.
TV.
You got it.
All right. So much.
You didn't know that's how you spell Talker, did you?
It is the new spelling.
It's the new
It's the
spelling.
new.
It's accepted spelling.
It's how the kids are spelling Talker, and so we adapted just like this. But you ask him why he's running, why he's doing this, because look, Hillary. Unless something happens here, right? Hillary probably has the Democratic nomination. There's a few other people, Martin O'Malley, who might run. I mean, this Baltimore thing, former mayor of Baltimore, governor of Maryland, might shake things up for him because he instituted many of the police policies that created some of the schism between the cops in Baltimore and the community of Baltimore City. And then, of course, you have, O'Malley, Bernie Sanders. There's one more that I'm missing here.
Webb, you're forgetting
Jim Webb. President Jim Webb, the former senator from the great state of Virginia, who didn't want to campaign for a second term because he didn't want to leave his house.
Right, pretty much.
Pretty much is the reason. There.
This is the most confusing presidential campaign I remember. I mean, he didn't love being in Washington D.C. He didn't love being a senator.
So why not run for president?
He was quite vocal about that. So yeah, the obvious next step is to run for president.
Naturally. No, I haven't seen any campaign events. I haven't seen him in Iowa and New Hampshire. I mean, maybe he did one trip here or there.
He actually had a tiny little press event yesterday at the same time that Bernie was announcing.
You blink, you miss it.
Pretty much.
My goodness. Well, look, Bernie is kind of, I guess, as real as it gets for now, and he's going to be in Iowa and New Hampshire and a lot of the early states, and we're going to talk about his political appeal, some of his ideas, why he's running, and why, I think Bernie, to me, and I was watching the press conference, that tiny press conference he had, I guess it was in New Hampshire or Vermont with like 4 other reporters there. The appeal of Bernie Sanders, to me, has always been that he seems like a real guy.
Yeah.
Like a real person, not someone who's slick and polished and is going to tell you what you want to hear, but really believes in what he says and really cares about people and wants to promote policies and talk about policies that he thinks helps people. And he calls himself a socialist Democrat, which a lot of people think, what does this mean? Is this communism? Is this Soviet? How left is here? Here he is explaining what that means, his ideology on Democracy Now! From November of 2006.
Well, I think it means the government has got to play a very important role in making sure that as a right of citizenship, all of our people have health care, that as a right, all of our kids, regardless of income, have quality child care, are able to go to college without going deeply into debt, that it means we do not allow large corporations and moneyed interests to destroy our environment, that we create a government in which it is not dominated by big money interests. I mean, to me, it means democracy, frankly. That's all it means.
Yeah. Health care for all, child care, affordable child care, affordable college, seriously tackling climate change, and getting big money out of politics. If you ask Hillary Clinton, she probably agrees with all of these principles. Mm-hmm. Bernie Sanders, a socialist Democrat, I think would go an extra mile that Hillary probably wouldn't necessarily subscribe to some of those prescriptions that he would take, or some of the vehicles he would take to get to those end goals. But the end goals for her and for him remain the same.
Yeah, it's an interesting. We had Bernie on the show yesterday. I should say Senator Sanders.
Of course.
We had him on the show yesterday. We're going to play back some of that interview during the TV break. So if you're watching on TawkrTV and Free Speech TV, you'll see some of that. But there's you talk about the no-nonsense of Bernie. Bill asked him a question that a lot of the Republican candidates are getting these days. If your good friend invited you to a same-sex wedding, would you attend?
Yeah.
Which none of the Republicans have given a great answer for. It's always like,
maybe.
It depends. But Bernie, just, like, before Bill even finished the question, he goes, what kind of question is this, Bill? This is ridiculous. Of course I'd go.
Seriously.
Like, just shut it down. He just shut Bill down before he even finished the question. What kind of question is this?
That is on
so
point.
mad.
That is an on point
so
invitation.
Mad.
Did Bill ask him about his idea of raising the retirement age? Because Bill is a big fan of raising the Social Security retirement age. And I'm wondering if he brought it up with Bernie Sanders.
No, Igor, that's funny that you would bring that up.
Okay.
That's funny you would bring that up.
I just want to make sure. Because it's one of the issues that Bernie Sanders is going to be focusing on in some respect. He has legislation to actually expand Social Security, to boost minimum benefits for the poorest beneficiaries, to kind of get an upstart boost for everybody, and to pay for it all by taxing rich people a little more, increasing their payroll tax. He's talked about it for a long, long time, and it's going to be a campaign issue because this election, if as much as it's about economics, it's about entitlements and entitlement programs and what do we do. And at a time when people like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and others want to raise the retirement age, want to means test the benefit for the oldest beneficiaries, Bernie Sanders is out there with a strong view of saying, no. Social Security has worked very well. Let's not talk about making it smaller or giving people less benefits. Let's talk about expanding it so that it could lift more people out of poverty. But again, you pay for it by getting rid of the cap that currently exists on how much of your income is taxed. So he says, look, if you're a regular person, you should vote for me. However, if you're a rich person who I'm going to tax more to pay for everything I'm proposing, you shouldn't.
Look, we're not going to agree on every issue, that's for sure. But don't vote against your own interest. I don't mind, really, if millionaires vote against me. They probably should. But for working people, we've got to come together, health care for all, stop our disastrous trade policies, make sure all of our kids through college get the education that they need. On those issues, I think we can bring people together.
When was the last time you heard a politician say, this group of people probably shouldn't vote for me?
And really mean it.
And you know he means it. Like, you look at all the trouble that so many of these politicians got themselves in by trying to pander to, Steve Scalise, right? With his white supremacist group that he spoke to. He was pandering to try and get votes. You could disagree with them, but he wanted their vote. And now you look at Bernie, he's like, I don't need their vote. Like,
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want the vote of the millionaires and
And
billionaires.
it's not just their vote, Peter. It's also their money.
You're right.
He's not
I don't need the money, I don't
taking
need the
big
vote.
donations.
Yeah.
He's not going to have a PAC, which is how you run a campaign
Yeah.
in 2015,
Who doesn't
2016.
have a PAC?
Yeah.
That's
He
great.
says small donations, everyone gives him $100. He can raise $3 million. It's another contrast with Hillary, who, of course, is going to have a lot of big money donors for her campaign, for the PAC, for everything else. But I thought this was funny. At his announcement yesterday, or the press conference yesterday, he was asked, what is your big difference with Hillary Clinton? How are you going to differentiate herself? And listen to this. This, of all of the policy issues out there that are affecting people today in 2015, this is what he goes to.
I voted against the war in Iraq.
What?
And not only did I vote against it, I helped lead the effort. And many of the things that I said back then turned out to be true. I mean, the massive destabilization in the region.
Bernie does Throwback Thursday in a serious way. Like, that is some real Throwback Thursday. He's not messing around. Like,
Yeah.
boom, 2003, right? That was
Yeah.
the vote, 2002.
Yeah.
Boom, 2002. She voted for the Iraq War. It sunk her in 2008. She still voted for it, you guys.
Wow. Hashtag TBT.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. For Grandpa Bernie, the use of these memes, like, he can... This is why he's popular with the college kids.
Clearly.
And of course,
Not
that's
just because he looks like one of their professors.
oh man, that hair. I mean,
Respect. Respect. No. Don't you dare say a bad word about his hair.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
We're all getting wigs.
I don't know. I just feel like if you contain it a little bit, it's going to go a long way. That's
See,
all.
I think that he's like Samson. I think that his power comes from his
comes from the
unkempt
hair.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. 55 Press, 866-55 Press. What do you think of Bernie Sanders? Is this somebody who can carry the progressive ideas into 2016? And the big question is, look, he's, hate to spoil it for everyone, spoiler alert here, but he's probably not going to win the nomination. But can he, I know, Peter, but can he shift the conversation in this election to the left? On issues like Social Security, on issues like trade, on issues like money in politics. That's really going to be the big test, because we had leftist candidates in 2004. Hello, Howard Dean. We had them in 2008. People like Kucinich also.
Sure.
Al Sharpton ran in 2004. You had that Alaska Senator Mike Gravel from 2004 with his famous rock throwing video. But I don't think those folks succeeded in kind of shifting the conversation in the Democratic Party. I don't recall. Bernie is a lot more outspoken. He has a longer track record. And for all of his kind of idealistic policies, so what many on the right and in the middle actually view as naive, he's gotten things done. As chairman of the Veterans Committee, has had bipartisan legislation, has worked with Republicans. So this is kind of a different animal here, I think. I think
you're spot on. Look, as right on the issues as Dennis Kucinich and Howard Dean and guys like that are, they don't have the record that Bernie Sanders has. He's been there a long time. He's walked the walk for a long time. He's gotten stuff done for a long time. So to have somebody be able to speak to these things with the depth of knowledge that he has and the years of experience that he has could very well make a difference, because and also I'm not trying to take away from the good, fine work of Dennis Kucinich.
Oh, you can take away from that. That's fine.
The guy said he saw aliens once. You know what I mean? The guy's kind of a kooky guy. But, Bernie is just a more relatable politician. He's not a politician in the eyes of a lot of people. He's just a guy who wants to get stuff done. So
couldn't agree with you
I think
more.
that's going to go really far for him.
Yes, and the challenge, though, of course, is expanding the political appeal. Right now, is a guy from Vermont. The country doesn't look like Vermont, so that's going to be somewhat problematic. He's popular among kind of the white, young college crowd. Is he going to be able to appeal to a wider audience, and what is he going to do to achieve that? That's going to be a big test for him. And what issues is he going to point to and focus on to try to get a response from people like Hillary Clinton, from people like Martin O'Malley? And I would like to know, Peter, and I don't know if he spoke to this in your interview yesterday, what he thinks about what's happening in Baltimore and what needs to be done, both in terms of how police need to deal with the people they're policing and some of the social and economic barriers that are in the way, impeding advancement in places like Baltimore and elsewhere in this country for many, many people, if he has a real plan to tackle that. We'll get into, actually, how Baltimore is shaping the 2016 race a little later in the program, because I think it's become pretty impactful and will become even more important as we move through the election. We'll talk about Iran, what's happening with that effort for Republicans to get their voices heard on the deal the president is trying to put together. And of course, focus on Baltimore, figure out what exactly is going on there, and talk to a historian who's really put together such a compelling piece about the structural legal barriers that were put in place in Baltimore to keep black people from owning homes, from accumulating wealth, from getting the kind of jobs you need to make it into the middle class. This wasn't just prejudice. This wasn't just kind of a racial attitude. These were real legal policies that were implemented by Maryland, by Baltimore, and by the federal government. And we're in some ways seeing the consequences of all of that now. Anyway, all of that coming up on the Bill Press Show. But first, your calls on Bernie Sanders. I want to know if you think he's the real deal. If you're voting for him, what is he going to do for Hillary? 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-PRESS. I'm Igor Volsky on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
This is the Bill Press Show.
President Bernie Sanders? What? Can it happen? 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Taking your calls on the show here this morning about the Vermont Independent throwing his hat into the ring. Ike from Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, man.
Weighing in. Ike, good morning.
Good morning from North Charleston, South Carolina. Yes, Bernie, I got involved with politics early on with Perot, and Perot was right about NAFTA. And if he hadn't been a nutcase, I would have voted for him. Now, with Bernie, he's completely transparent. He's not a nutcase. And it's time for the issue to be brought to the table that Occupy Wall Street and a lot of other people have been complaining about that nobody's listening to.
That's right. Lift those issues up.
The income inequality, lack of jobs, and the BS that keeps going on in this country that needs to be stopped. And
that's right, Ike. All right, we got to run back in a moment here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It'll be home to 942.
So this is my computer?
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
How will Bernie Sanders shake up the 2016 contest? That's our question this morning on The Bill Press Show for this Friday, May 1st, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress. John from Highbridge, New Jersey, weighing in. John, good morning.
Good morning to you, and I'll tell you how Bernie can do it. As soon as he announced yesterday, I made a big sign, Sanders for president. Vote people, not profit, and I put it on my house, took a picture, sent it to all my friends. And they all said, who is he? He can't do it alone, but he can do it with all of us. And additionally, Elizabeth Warren said she wouldn't run for president, but she didn't say anything about vice president.
There you go. Sanders Warren 2016. Dream ticket?
I mean, that for a lot of people, yeah.
Scott.
Drive some progressives like crazy. With
Wow.
joy.
Just
They would just
explode. Scott from Skowhegan.
The old Skowhegan. Yes, indeed.
Scott,
Good old
what do you think about a Sanders Warren ticket? Are you in?
I think the country needs that more than ever at this point. Listen, and I take issue with you calling him grandpa and stuff. You know, you don't call Hillary grandma. I mean, if you listen,
I should.
If you listen to the man's message, it's been consistent for the last 25 years. He said the same thing. Hillary's been all over the board. You know, she's a chameleon. We don't need another monarch in this country. We need somebody who knows what the hell they're doing.
Hey, listen, Scott, I'm with you. Sanders.
No, you're not, dude. You're sitting there trashing Sanders, and the country has
trashing him.
Oh, come on, Grandpa's a term of endearment.
Grandpa, listen, that's his personality. That's kind of how he comes across as a grandpa who cares about the children of America. Who are all of them are his far.
Okay, yeah.
Too far.
Now you're just overcompensating.
Brad from Madison.
Since when did Grandpa become like a negative thing?
Yeah, Brad from Madison, Wisconsin. Let me ask you: is it okay for me to call Bernie Sanders Grandpa?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Right? What's wrong with that?
Bernie has been consistent for years, like the previous caller said. His views spew integrity.
Yes.
He's not owned by anyone, including the Democratic Party. He's worked both with Democrats and Republicans, and he stood against Democrats and Republicans. He's advocated for students and the middle class, the poor, the unemployed, the elderly. He's done it consistently. He will not only push Hillary to the left, I hope he pushes the country left, and we vote for Bernie Sanders for president.
Let me just ask you one more thing before I let you go. What issue for you would you like to see him focus on and push Hillary on? Because, it's not going to be all of them. He has to focus on one or two things to really define himself in contrast with her and to hopefully bring her along with him.
Sanders has stood against Citizens United from day one, and that would go a long, long way in fixing this mess.
Yeah.
It's a big, long battle, but he has stood against it ever since the inception of it.
Yeah, and it's one of the three reasons that he says he's running for president: money in politics, getting it out of there, and funding his campaign through small-time donations.
Yeah, I don't want to turn it into like a bash Hillary thing. We've been kind of careful of that as we talk about this. But there's no denying the fact that Hillary Clinton has been sort of all over the place on a couple of different issues. She hasn't necessarily been consistent. And I know that people evolve, and that's great. I think that's healthy. But when you look at the record of Bernie Sanders and you look at some of the things that he said about the Iraq War, about same-sex marriage, about like the legalization of pot and things like that, for over the years, and see where the country has ended up, these statements that seemed so controversial for him to make 10, 15 years ago are pretty mainstream these days.
People are agreeing with him now.
Yeah, he's been on the right side of history for a long time.
The flip side of this, of course, is to say, yes, Bernie Sanders, Grandpa Bernie Sanders, is a very aspirational candidate. We see in him what we would ideally want for this country. Some progressives do, at least. Hillary, they argue, is a practical candidate who, A, can probably get elected. Because, look, at the end of the day, I think this is more of a center-right country than it is a center-left country, frankly. And the argument goes, she has more experience to actually implement and some of the goals that both her and Sanders agree to get those done. Now, that's kind of the theory. Is that actually the case? I don't know. Chris from Barry, Vermont. Chris, welcome to the program.
Hi, guys. Listen, I've been up here for almost 10 years, and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are the only two senators that give a rat's about the working class in this country. Don't make no mistake, Hillary Clinton does not give a damn about working people. Bernie Sanders does, and
well, that's not fair, Chris. I mean, why would you say she doesn't care about working people?
I'll tell you why. Because I'm 53 years old. I've lived through the Clintons, and I am not right. I'm not left. I'm an independent in the middle. And what I've seen Hillary do is pander to the corporate giants. Now, this is exactly the point that Bernie has been making. He's the only senator that has been brave enough to use the O word, that is oligarchy, which is exactly what we live in right now. We do not have a representative form of democratic rule in this country, and we haven't had it for most of my life. It's been building and building and building over the last 50 years. And I'm telling you, an oligarchy is what we have, and he's the only one brave enough to say it. And I think that if this man can get past the powers that be, that have the power to keep him at arm's length.
Yeah, Chris, I hear you. Look, he can say it, but the question is, can he do it, right? Can he implement a lot of these ideas that he's talking about? That's the question. And Hillary, the argument goes, yes, she takes corporate money. Look, if Bernie is kind of not an outside, but if he's an agitator, kind of pushing and prodding at the system as is, the oligarchy as you describe it, Hillary's approach is, let's work within the system, within the powers that be, to try to get some of this stuff done. At least that's the Clinton approach, the Clinton mindset all of these years. Nadine from San Francisco, California, weighing in on Bernie Sanders here on the Bill Press Show.
Hi, I have two words, Citizens United, and that's what Bernie Sanders is mainly in the race for.
Yeah.
He wants to not run against anybody, and I'm not using my words, I'm using his. I received his email yesterday, and he said, I'm not running against anyone. And he's running to bring this to the Democratic debates.
Yeah, and that's really the benefit here is to Hillary, if she's taking big money donations, can't credibly talk about getting money out of politics. Bernie, the idea is, can probably do that. He's funding his campaign in a different way, and he's been on top of this issue from the very beginning. Dave from DeKalb, Illinois, quickly, good morning.
Good morning. As far as Bernie goes, it's nice to be excited about a politician. I think they're mostly all corporate tools, including Hillary, and that's why I wouldn't have voted for her anyway. So it's really nice to see Bernie, throw his hat in the ring because it's exciting. It's a politician I'd actually volunteer for.
Yeah, well, okay, that's what he's asking you to do. Give him a couple $100. If you and 100 million people do that, he'll be a little competitive, I suppose. Kevin from Chicago, good morning.
Yeah, hey, good morning, guys. Yeah, the big thing here is he's got to keep it focused on the issues. When he stays on the issues that he's fervent about and has always been about, we win that argument. Because, again, like he said, how are you going to run against what he's saying? He's talking about what 99% of this country, is concerning him. Now, you have to look at the votes, okay? 8 in 10 people don't vote, so it's going to be up to us that know Bernie. We all know what Bernie stands for. We know the integrity of the man. It's going to be up to us to turn everybody on that we know about them and get them re-engaged in politics. Because clearly, over 75% of this country is not engaged in politics. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't.
Thanks, Kevin. If there's a real grassroots candidate in this 2016 race, it's gonna have to be Bernie Sanders, at least on the Democratic side. He's the one trying to get people mobilized. He's the one trying to get people to really rally around the issues. And he's the one who's saying, look, we got to focus here on what matters to people. And if you listen to our callers this morning, that's getting money out of politics and bringing back our democracy to a place where one family can spend millions of dollars on one candidate, on one cause, and eclipse with all their money everybody else.
By the way, about you calling Bernie Sanders Grandpa.
Grandpa Bernie.
Grandpa Bernie. We got a tweet that just said, Bernie Sanders has that grandpa quality in Obi-Wan Kenobi Zen Master kind of way.
Nice.
It's a nice thing. Chill out, everybody.
Chill out.
Grief.
Chill out. 866-55-PRESS. I'm Igor Volsky. We'll be back right after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these they're wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that they could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. You know, and like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Yeah, the sounds of Baltimore still echoing loudly in all of our ears this morning on Friday, May 1st, 2015. Almost a week since violence broke out on Monday following, of course, the death of Freddie Gray, the 25-year-old black man who died in one shape, form, way, or another in the back of that police van. We don't know for sure what happened. 3 different investigations now underway to try to get to the bottom of how he broke his spine exactly and who is responsible for his death. Stacia Brown, Baltimore-based contributor for The Nation, joins us now. She has a piece on thenation.com called Praying for Peace, Living Another Reality, a dispatch from Baltimore. Stacia, welcome to the program, and thank you for being with us. What's the latest in Baltimore as that city is still in the process of recovering from the week's events?
Thank you for having me. I think things are dying down now, and everything seems to be, there's a lot of protesting still going on, but the protesting is primarily peaceful. I don't think anyone is trying to have a resurgence of what happened on Monday of this week, despite the fact that the curfew is in place and people are angry about some of the reports that are coming out or being leaked from the police department about
And that's really, I think, what's been so inspiring about this last week. Yes, you had violence on Monday, but you also had what I think is really a tremendous response from the overwhelming majority of the community of church leaders working together with groups like the Nation of Islam, with gang members, to try to put themselves between stores and looters, protesters and police, and to try to keep the calm in their city and to keep this focused on a true kind of more peaceful uprising that brings light to some of the issues that Baltimore is facing.
I agree. I think that a lot of people from different ideologies this week have really come together, and it's been very inspiring, considering the size of the city. The fact that nothing else has happened that's been disheartening, that's been painful for people. I think people saw what happened on Monday and they understood it, but they wanted to move on and to do something more productive this week.
And is there an effort? I know there's going to be protests this weekend, a true kind of push to talk about some of the underlying grievances that have animated this movement, what advocates are calling a real uprising, not only for justice for Freddie Gray, not only for reforming some of the tactics of police, but also getting down to the kind of the guts of all this, which are some of the economic and social inequalities that have been animating that city for decades. Is there a kind of a real movement to turn this tragedy into this positive unifying force and to try to address some of those matters?
I hope that there is, but there's been such a stronghold of poverty here for decades, and it's hard to get to the bottom or to get to the guts of it and try to figure out what to do. People here already know about those issues, including our government. They know, and Some would argue that the government has been perpetuating poverty in certain concentrated areas of the community. Not much has been done to help or to alleviate that tension, although some things have been done, community-based initiatives to help particularly economically depressed areas. It's just, I don't know. We're feeling very overwhelmed, about what's going on, and I hope that some things are being done, but it's hard to say at this point.
But what's the feeling there? Is this a situation where, there's violence on the streets, you have reporters from every station covering it in a 24-hour kind of news cycle way, it dies down, everyone moves on and forgets it? Can this be sustained? I'm saying, can the energy that occurred there this week that brought all of these people together, are we actually going to have a real community conversation about what we need to do to empower people with economic opportunity? There's a lot of talk now, but what's going to happen in a week after we move on to the next big story?
Right. One of the things that I've been realizing this week is just how long community conversations have been going on here. So it's, we've been having a lot of conversations about this, and we've been doing what we can to, ameliorate some of the anger and some of the tension going on here. It's, national attention has been great, I guess, to make, the rest of the country more aware, but Baltimore has been struggling with and grappling with these issues for as long as they've been here, So it's just, I don't know. I think we'll continue to do that after everything dies down.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. I mean, this isn't new for the community. This isn't new for the people who have been working on these issues for such a long time. It's just new, I think, frankly, to a lot of white people in America who are kind of waking up to what's going on in large parts of this country. It's a real late wake-up call, but at least there's kind of a national conversation around it now. Stacia Brown, Baltimore-based contributor for The Nation, thank you so much for being with us, for shining some light on what's happening on the ground in Baltimore. We'll certainly keep our eye on everything there and talk more as the program continues about where we go from here, how we make sure this never happens again. I'm Igor Volsky, filling in here for Bill Press. We'll be back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, 56 minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show continues on this Friday, May 1st, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress. We are, of course, taking your calls as usual at 866-55-PRESS or 866-557-7377. Discussing, of course, the 2016 race for the White House, Bernie Sanders, and what his candidacy can mean for this campaign, but also keeping our eye out on Baltimore and making sure that, A, the way Freddie Gray's investigation is being handled is in compliance with how it should be. Yeah. Frankly, 3 different investigations. And what do we make of these rumors or these statements by one particular person who's now still unidentified, who rode in that van with Freddie and claims now through police that Freddie was in that van and was banging against the walls of that van so hard that he broke his own spine and is thus, the implication is, responsible for his own death.
Yeah.
That now, of course, is being contradicted by Donta Ellen, who's another prisoner in that van, who's saying it didn't happen. Well, that's why we have 3 investigations to really get to the bottom of this and to bring justice for the situation for Freddie Gray and for the people of Baltimore, where this kind of thing happens all too often. 5 different deaths in the hands of police in the last couple of years. Unacceptable, I say. Unacceptable. Back in a moment.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Today, that Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont announced that he is a candidate in the Democratic Party, a Democratic candidate for president in 2016. He, of course, is the senator from Vermont. My former boss spent a year as an intern for Senator Bernie Sanders, and our new candidate for president in 2016 joining us on our news line this morning. Senator Sanders, good morning and congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. Great to be with you.
You went out, you told us a few months ago you were going to go out and test the waters around the country. What persuaded you to go from testing the waters to actually running?
Well, I did test the waters. I was out in Iowa. I've been in New Hampshire. I've been in South Carolina. I've been in the West Coast. I've been in Texas. I've been in many parts of the country. And, Bill, what I'm finding with very large crowds coming out is that people are extremely frustrated and, in fact, sick and tired of what's going on in this country, where for ordinary people, they are working longer hours for lower wages, where people sit back and worry whether their kids are going to be able to afford to go to college, whether they're worried about their jobs going to China. And meanwhile, they're seeing 99% of all new income being created going to the top 1%, and the top 1/10% owning almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. So they're looking at an economy and they're saying, "What's going on in this economy? I'm working working 2 jobs. I'm working 3 jobs. I'm not going anywhere, and yet the people on the top are doing phenomenally well." And I think people are sick and tired of that. They want an economy that works for all Americans and not just for the billionaire class.
And they want somebody who will fight for them, right? They need a voice.
I think they do. I think people look around and they say, look, the corporations who have so much power in America could care less about the average American. They stash their money in the Cayman Islands. They don't pay taxes. They'll move to China tomorrow if they can save a few bucks by hiring cheap labor abroad. They look at the political system and they see a Republican Party which has moved very, very far to the right, essentially controlled by the Koch brothers and other billionaires. And they look at the Democratic Party and not seeing people are prepared to stand up and say, you know what, we have got to fight back. This country belongs to all of us and not just to a handful of people. So I think you're right. And people want to see fundamental changes in the way we do economics and politics in this country.
Now, you know, Senator, what the establishment, if you will, is already saying about your candidacy. You can't win because you're too far left and you won't have enough money. What's your take on that? How do you respond to that?
Well, let me just talk about the money issue. Bill, you and I have chatted about this. I worry very, very much that as a result of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, that we are losing every day the foundations of American democracy. And that is that you have a situation where the Koch brothers and other billionaire families, and the Kochs in particular, may be now a more powerful political force than either the Democratic or Republican Party. They have more. They're going to spend more money. Mm-hmm. They have a better organization. This is one family, the second wealthiest family in America that, by the way, wants to end Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, EPA, et cetera, et cetera. So what we are looking at in an election, and it's absolutely true, where candidates will receive unbelievable hundreds of millions of dollars from super PACs. Super PACs may, in fact, end up spending more money than their own campaigns. This is an issue. Can I compete with that? Absolutely not. We have relied throughout my political life on small individual contributions. I've gotten a higher percentage of small contributions than any other candidate for the Senate. But we'll have to do the best that we can. And, the money will come in at $50 and $100 and $25, and I appreciate that very much. But, we're not going to have billionaires putting money into a super PAC. But having said that, I think we can raise enough money. We can raise enough money to run a winning campaign. May not be as much as other people, but it can be enough money.
And the idea that you are too far left to be out of the mainstream?
Well, let me tell you something. That I'm not into this left-right stuff. If you ask people questions and you say to people, should we rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and create 13 million jobs, which is legislation that I have offered, you know what people say? Yes. Whether they are Democrats, Republicans, or moderates in the middle. If you ask people, should we raise the minimum wage to a living wage? And over a period of years, I think that wage should be $15 an hour. Majority of the American people say yes. Should we ask the wealthiest people and largest corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes? American people say yes. Should we invest in education and make college affordable for all of our people? The American people say yes. So I think, and you go down the list, there's some areas where that may not be true. Climate change, there is still a whole lot of Republicans who are not on board with reality that climate change is caused by human activity. But I think that when you look at issue after issue, the American people, no matter whether they're conservatives or progressives, understand they're getting screwed, and the big money interests are making out like bandits. They want change.
Senator Bernie Sanders, our guest, the just newly announced Democratic candidate for president of 2016. Senator, one of the big issues facing the Senate you've been involved in is a Trans-Pacific Partnership. President Obama wants it, said it's necessary to keep America in the forefront of global trade. Your position?
No, I'm adamantly against it, Bill. Ever since I have been in Congress, in the House, and then in the Senate, I have voted against all of these trade agreements because I understood that they were pushed very hard by the multinational corporations and by Wall Street. And for the big money interests, these trade agreements are great because what they can do and what they have done is shut down manufacturing facilities here in the United States of America where working people were making a decent living. Shut them down here and move to China and other low-wage countries. That's the fact. That's an indisputable fact that we have lost millions of decent-paying jobs because of NAFTA, because of permanent normal trade relations with China, because of the Korean trade agreement. It makes no sense to me to keep going down a path which has failed us in the past.
And online, this is the Bill Press Show.
And then there was Bernie, and then there was Bernie and Hillary, the Democratic contenders for the presidential election. Good morning. Welcome to the Bill Press Show, Hour 2 for this Friday, May 1st, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress, analyzing, talking about what it all means and what can we expect as Bernie Sanders brings his brand of Vermont independence into the race. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377 if you want to be part of the conversation, because we always want to hear from you and what you feel Bernie should emphasize in this election to try to shift the conversation around money in politics, around climate change, and around that gap that everyone now wants to talk about of income inequality in this country and what it's doing to America, from Baltimore to other areas and to middle and lower income Americans. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Now, you can hear us, of course, on the iHeartRadio app, on the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel, or if you're driving in your car, you're probably listening through one of our favorite progressive radio stations.
Sure.
Full cast here this morning on this Friday. Peter Ogburn.
Hi, Mr. Volsky.
Good morning. Elisa Murphy running the board.
Morning.
Alicia Cruz taking your calls. And Cyprian Bolding running our video service here at youtube.com/TawkrTV. It's where you can watch us. It's how you can listen to us. We're really everywhere. So there's no excuse for not tuning in. You can also tweet at us at BP Show on Twitter and on Facebook /Bill Press Show.
So many ways to get in touch.
So many ways to tell us what you think about Bernie Sanders, about what's going on in Baltimore, about whether or not I should be calling Bernie Grandpa. It's a very contentious issue.
I told you shouldn't call Bernie
here
Grandpa.
This Friday morning.
I didn't say that.
And joining us to discuss it is Emma Roller. She's the staff correspondent for the National Journal.
The staff correspondent. And she'll tell us in just a moment if she's as excited about Bernie Sanders running for president as our Bill Press Show listeners. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
All right, fine. Just a couple of other stories making news. To Chicago we go, where last night the NFL draft took place, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had the number 1 pick, and they chose Jameis Winston from Florida State, a controversial football player, but they figured that his talent trumped his controversy. Going second was Marcus Mariota from Oregon. It's funny that neither Jameis Winston nor Marcus Mariota were actually there in Chicago. They weren't there on stage to actually make an appearance. But he went to the Tennessee Titans. Interesting that Roger Goodell didn't even know how to pronounce Marcus Mariota's name. He pronounced it as Mariotto.
No way.
Yeah. It was really embarrassing, actually. The good thing about this is, as soon as Roger Goodell came out, before he even opened his mouth, everybody just loudly started booing every single time he came out. It was pretty great.
Rightly so.
Yeah. I mean, people hate him, and he earned that. It looks like President Barack Obama, when he leaves office, his presidential library is going to be taking place, is going to be going in Chicago.
Ooh.
We weren't sure what was going to happen.
Right?
We thought it might be Hawaii, and then a couple of weeks ago, there were reports it was going to be in New York. That's where they were going to put it. But now they've settled on Chicago. Apparently said it's going to be happening in Chicago's South Side. So,
well, if it had been Hawaii, I would have changed my vocation to Obama historian and would have had to do a lot of research. But now that it's in Chicago, maybe not.
Presidential library correspondent.
That's right. Yeah, for Think Progress. I like it.
Stay there in Hawaii.
I'll pitch that this morning.
And speaking of retiring, Jon Stewart is retiring soon, and we found out what exactly he's going to be doing when he leaves. He and his wife have purchased a farm in New Jersey that they hope to turn into an animal sanctuary.
Oh,
how about that?
That's awesome.
Isn't that cool? So they already have a couple of sheep that they're going to put on there that are named after John and his wife. Tracy and John are the name of the sheep. Someone gave them the sheep, but they were already named after them. So yeah, that's what he's going to be doing.
Very sweet.
We bought a zoo.
Sounds hilarious.
Apparently. That would be a good situation comedy.
Yes.
Like it's out of TV. And
well, this could be his second movie. No.
Yeah.
You didn't like the first one, I know. You don't want him to. You did like the first one.
I didn't like it.
You
I did
didn't.
not.
That's what I'm saying.
I did
You
not
don't,
love
you
that first
don't
movie.
want him to make a second movie about the
What
sheep.
movie did he make?
What, Rosewater was it called?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
Rosewater.
I kind of wanted to see it, but then you said, and I said, okay, I
You know
won't.
what? It was pretty good for like a Lifetime TV movie.
Oh.
Ouch.
Oh, wow. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. If you want to weigh in on that, on Jon Stewart making Lifetime cinema, please call us.
Call a different show.
But
I don't want to hear it.
I want to hear
I don't
it.
wanna
Call
hear
me, tweet me. I want to add Igor Volsky. I want to hear it. Or at Emma Roller, the staff correspondent for the National Journal. Now, we thought Bernie was going to run for a long, long time. He has been hinting at it. He's been meeting with people. He's been saying, I'm exploring, I'm traveling. Why did he finally pull the trigger yesterday?
Well, he's been saying for a long time that he would make a decision by the end of April, and yesterday was the end of April. So he pretty much stuck to his plan there. I thought it was interesting. At first, he was going to make his, first public announcement in the Senate Radio and TV Press Gallery, which is this tiny room inside the Capitol that, only congressional reporters know about, which I thought would have been a little indicative of how quixotic this campaign is going to be for him. But then he moved it outside to the Senate swamp, which was...
Oh, that's where he was yesterday.
Yes.
I thought he was in New Hampshire for some reason.
No,
he was in D.C.
He's going there this weekend, though, I think. But I just learned he's still going to be running as an independent. He's not going to...
Oh, he's not going to be...
He's not going to be running as a Democrat.
Oh, really?
How is he going to get on the ballot?
That is a great question.
Bernie, what's the plan? Call us, 866-55-PRESS. We want to know. Now, do you feel like he's doing this for the right reasons? Because it seems to me, in 2008 and 2004, we saw some of these candidacies, Dennis Kucinich, Mike Gravel, Al Sharpton, other people I now can't think of, who kind of didn't really impact the conversation, the policy conversation, and didn't, I don't think, expand, I guess, the window of kind of what's acceptable in mature American political discourse,
right,
so to speak. Do you think that Bernie could inject a real debate about money in politics, about, expanding Social Security? And will he be able to push Hillary, who's already been framing this campaign all about economic populism, middle class, income gap? Is he going to push her in a more progressive direction, do you think?
Well, I think it's really smart to bring up the 2000 and 2004 election. One of names one of the names you left off, another Vermont politician, is Howard Dean. Who, I'm not going to say
Dr. Dean
on air.
Yeah.
But what he's actually been working a little more behind the scenes these days with a group called Democracy for America, which is one of the groups behind the Draft Elizabeth Warren for President movement. And you talk about whether Bernie can help push the conversation left on issues like economic inequality. It's something that liberals are really still, encouraged by seeing Bernie jump into the race, I think. But these groups are still not letting go of the idea that Elizabeth Warren is going to run for president, which is just not going to happen.
Bernie getting into the race means that Elizabeth Warren is definitely going to run, right?
Definitely.
100%.
Isn't this the clue now that she's
in? I mean, I wish we had like a drop on the board that did the "Let It Go" song to every time this kind of conversation about Elizabeth.
Really
I think most people have moved on, and I think in many respects,
Move On has not moved on. Let me tell you.
Take a hint, guys.
But look, I think that she is actually more effective staying outside of this race than she is in it. Because when you're in it, it's kind of a different ballgame. You're raising money. You have to weigh in on everything. And your message, your core message, and for Elizabeth, it's what? Income inequality, big banks, da-da-da-da. All of that gets muddled as you talk about Iran, as you talk about all these other issues. And so you're spread thin and you're not as effective, I don't think. So,
right. Whereas Bernie will now be challenged with exactly that, with having to answer for whatever Hillary Clinton says on Iran, on police brutality, on all of these things.
Now, speaking of other Democrats challenging Hillary, somebody who had a pretty tough week this week, I think, as he considers or prepares, probably made the decision to run for 2016, is former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. He was the mayor of Baltimore, and he was the one who instituted a lot of the no-tolerance policies that many say had ruptured or, further eroded the relationship between police and the community and led to a lot of the tensions that you see on display this week. How is he handling that?
Right. Well, when Martin O'Malley was mayor of Baltimore, he instituted this program called CompStat, which people who've watched The Wire, I forget what it's called there, but it's this program where it uses data to track crime. And it was supposed to be this very targeted program for police to track crime.
And this was, we should say, this was like all the scream in the late 90s, early 2000s, that by getting tough on crime and by going after the very small offenses, you can prevent larger offenses. And it was instituted throughout the nation or in different parts of the nation. And it did show a drop in crime. However...
Right. So it's this sort of broken windows policy, what it's called, and that gained a lot of popularity in the 90s in New York with Rudy Giuliani and in Baltimore. But critics of this policy say that it has a distinctly racial outcome. And I believe the most startling stat I've heard recently is that 1 in 6 Baltimore residents is incarcerated.
Yeah, you would, and under this policy, you would be arrested for minor offenses such as loitering, littering, and the philosophy that some critics say O'Malley adopted, and a lot of mayors did, and the Hillary's husband, Bill, instituted in some ways on the federal level, is this philosophy of put them in jail and figure it out later. And that created a real confrontational attitude with police and created also a problem for when these people would leave jail. Even though charges wouldn't be filed, they would have things on their record. It would be more difficult for them to get a job, and the cycle would continue. So he walked the streets of Baltimore, Martin O'Malley, to kind of show that he understands the problem and to suggest that he's the only city mayor to really grapple with these issues.
Right. It's a totally tricky line for him to walk because he did implement these programs. O'Malley's campaign really touts his record as a mayor and as a governor, helping to decrease crime. But you can't tout that without grappling with this huge, rise in incarceration and, how that, the sort of racial outcomes that has had.
Now, what I don't understand is if I am preparing to run for president and one of my pillars or arguments in doing so is that I was mayor of a big city, and that big city is now really in the news in a big, big way and connected to the policies that I implemented, why I don't give a big speech laying out how my experience will inform my approach in enacting policies that ameliorate some of the root causes of this problem. It's what Hillary did on Wednesday. And I thought for her, and given her history of this very cautious approach to issues and this pattern of something happens and the Clintons kind of weigh the options and then come up with some position that's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and tries to kind of straddle the middle. She came out, I thought, on Wednesday with a fairly bold approach to criminal justice. However, it also comes at a time where all Republicans are really also on the same page in terms of how we deal with these problems. But what were some of her proposals?
Right. So one of the big things was body cameras that she proposed yesterday, saying that all police should have body cameras. And actually, coincidentally, there was this poll that came out from the Harvard Institute of Politics. They released this poll sort of taking the temperature of young voters. And this poll found that 80% of millennials think that body cameras for police are a good idea. So this is clearly an issue that young people have very strong support for. And like you said, she didn't take such a milquetoast approach that you might have seen toward the past. Yesterday, she was pretty forceful in her remarks. And yeah.
Say, who needs Bernie Sanders? Hillary Clinton? New Hillary is forceful.
It is
forceful in her remarks.
It is interesting to see how she's moving forward in this campaign, right? Starting with her video. Because I think that a lot of the criticism on Hillary, which we've heard, is fair, that she's a little wishy-washy. And she's changed her position a lot of times on a lot of different issues.
And in this issue, interestingly, she's had to distance herself from Bill Clinton, who, of course, put more cops on the street. Yep. People were being arrested for minor offenses. And he even admitted that overreaction to the crimes of the late 1990s, mid-90s, late 90s probably was an overcorrection in some respects.
And that's left an opening for people like Senator Rand Paul to attack her on that and say she is, criticizing the program that her husband put in place. Then again, Hillary's defenders have come back and said, crime today is not the same as crime was in the 1990s.
Yeah, she's adapting to different circumstances. Right. All right, 866-55-PRESS, Hammer Rollers, stick around. We'll get more into this issue and everything shaping the race here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all of the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 27 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show on this Friday, May 1st, 2015. We continue with Emma Roller, the staff correspondent for the National Journal. And before we go back to your calls, Tony in Chicago, just hold on for 1 second. Emma has a special announcement on Bernie's race for our listeners.
Well, here's the thing. So we had some calls to try and clear up whether or not he's running as an independent or as a Democrat for president.
Here's what the New York Times says.
Yeah, so it's a little confusing. From this morning's New York Times headline, Sanders will keep independent status in Democratic primary. And then Alan Rappaport, the reporter, goes on to say, is the man who boasts of being the longest-serving independent in congressional history now a Democrat? The answer, somewhat curiously, is no. Ready for such concerns, the Democratic National Committee said that Mr. Sanders met the party's criteria to run in the Democratic primary. Michael Briggs, a spokesman for Mr. Sanders, said that Vermont has no party registration, so the senator could not officially join the Democrats even if he wanted to.
Ugh, what does it all mean? My understanding is he would have to be a Democrat for this to make sense, because otherwise you really can't get on the ballot or have a real competitive race. That was always the effort there.
Well, a DNC spokeswoman told the Times that his long, Democratic record and the fact that he caucuses with the Dems in the Senate would allow him to
What does
run.
it all mean?
I don't know.
We'll find out. All right, Emma Roller, staff correspondent for the National Journal. Thank you for coming in. Tony, sorry about that. We'll be back with more here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Yeah, it's just that easy. At BP Show on Twitter. I'm at Igor Volsky on Twitter. Weigh in into the conversation as we've been discussing the latest out of Baltimore. People still trying to make do with what happened earlier this week and continuing the momentum into the weekend as they make an effort to really talk about some of the root causes of why the uprising happened and how now to react to it as a community and what needs to be done to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But joining me now in studio is Burgess Everett. He's the congressional reporter for Politico, because as much as we've been looking inward this week, this news week about Baltimore, we also had a whole fight on Capitol Hill about this congressional Iran bill that the president had agreed to a couple of weeks ago after just months of saying, I make the deal with Iran, you decide on the sanctions. They made a compromise with Bob Corker, who's the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, in which Congress would have about 30 days, is it, to review any final deal, during which...
it could be as many as 52 days, but essentially 30 days to 52 days, essentially.
They'd review that deal, during which the president wouldn't be able to lift sanctions and have an up or down vote on approval or disapproval. But as this thing is making its way through the Senate, boy, has it reached some hurdles, with Republicans, I think, seizing on the issue to really make it into a referendum about the president's foreign policy, about his leadership on Iran. And people like Tom Cotton and Marco Rubio, who have been vocal in this debate for quite some time, now trying to attach poison pill amendments that really jeopardize this whole congressional effort. And a week after we thought this was a done deal, that Congress is finally going to be able to weigh in on Iran, which they've wanted to do all this time, we awake this Friday with news that it all might be in jeopardy because Republicans, it seems, are pushing too hard. What do they want to attach, Burgess, to this bill that the president says he won't sign?
Well, there was a lot of theatrics yesterday in the Senate, essentially over amendments, which is, you say we're looking outward. Essentially, it's the most Washington possible debate ever. And I covered the Senate, and pretty much every bill is a fight over who can get amendments. And on this bill, Democrats don't have any amendments. They don't even really want to be on the bill. This is a Republican-led effort. There was a big compromise with Democrats on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee with Chairman Bob Corker. Democrats have agreed, led by Ben Cardin of Maryland, to go forward with this bill. It was very popular, and now it's on the floor. And now Marco Rubio wants to attach an amendment that would require Iran to recognize Israel as a state, which Democrats don't particularly want to vote on, especially because they want to keep that off the bill, but they would be forced under many scenarios to reject the bill on a party line vote.
Now, what's wrong with adding an amendment to this bill that says Iran has to recognize Israel?
Iran is not going to recognize Israel. So that would blow up the negotiations that the president is trying to finish up. It's viewed as outside the scope of the nuclear deal by the administration. So it's possible you could attach that amendment and maybe force it down the White House's throat, and they have to sign it anyway because it passes, who knows, 100-0 on the Senate floor. I'm not sure. It's such a tough political vote. It's hard to say that it would be defeated if it came up. So essentially the problem is not with the idea, it's with the practicality of it and how it would interact with the nuclear negotiations.
But Republicans argue, look, with this deal, you're going to be empowering Iran. You're giving them more money, more flexibility as you peel back some of the sanctions. And in some ways, the president, they argue, is kind of putting all of his eggs in one basket and saying, we're just going to deal with this Iran the Iran nuclear program very narrowly, and we're not going to worry about Iran's meddling in Yemen and other places in the world and how it's expanding its influence and the possible threat it causes for Israel. So while on one hand, Marco Rubio is running for president. This makes a lot of sense. It puts Democrats, as you point out, in a difficult position.
And I don't think his goal is to make Democrats, put them in a difficult position. That might be some of the Republicans, but he's not running against any of these Democrats for president. This is more about showing that he is the strongest candidate on Israel, essentially.
Yes, but I'm just saying that it feels also like there's legitimate concern here about Iran, right? I mean, it's not like everyone we can know ahead of time, obviously, how this Iran deal and everything that's going to come out of it in terms of bringing Iran and integrating into the world community, how that would change and impact its role in the Middle East and American interests in the Middle East. And Republicans who have certainly a different approach to Iran and generally are saying, one, the Israel amendment. What are some of the others?
So Senator Cotton wants a vote on his amendment that would require all these nuclear facilities to cease, essentially, for sanctions to be lifted. And under the political framework right now, there would be still one nuclear facility. And earlier this week, Senator Barrasso from Wyoming offered an amendment that would require Iran to the U.S. to require to certify that Iran is not sponsoring terrorism against Americans. That failed because, again, it was viewed outside the scope of the current negotiations. I mean, a lot of people want to use this bill as a platform for every grievance the United States has with Iran and the administration, and Democrats say that's not the place for it. And Senator Corker, too, he's voted against 2 tough amendments this week. But the bottom line is, I think, a lot of this gets lost. You say the bill's in jeopardy. It's not really the case. The bill's probably going to pass. It's the amendments that are in jeopardy after yesterday's fight when Tom Cotton and Marco Rubio are trying to force votes cut in line from people that have been negotiating about which amendments are going to get votes on. And so the likely result is next week, Mitch McConnell has to end debate on the bill, and they move it to the House with no more amendment votes. And so it's unclear even whether Cotton or Rubio will get votes on those amendments at this point because of the way they kind of use these tactics to try to force these votes.
And just to lay this out, kind of the broad philosophical debates here, Republicans say you have to deal with these issues right now as you're thinking about bringing Iran into the world community. The administration would argue that once you solve the nuclear problem and take that off the table, you can then kind of empower the people of Iran, who will theoretically have kind of more moderate leaders in the years to come, and will act more rationally on the world stage, or at least as you integrate them into the world, you can better work with them in shaping their role in the Middle East. Is that the argument, that once the nuclear program is off the table, you can kind of more aggressively and maybe even more easily deal with some of their other problem spots, the terrorism portion and everything else they're doing?
I mean, that's possible. I think mostly people don't think that Iran is going to negotiate on those points, but they will negotiate on the nuclear aspect because these sanctions have been linked to the nuclear program and they're hurting the economy, and Iran's people are struggling essentially because of the way that they've been isolated economically. So I think you're right that it could possibly put them back at the table negotiating on larger issues and eventually open up more dialogue between the United States. But I don't think the president is really necessarily doing this because he thinks all of a sudden we're going to restore relations with Iran. I think he thinks this is the opportunity essentially to curtail the nuclear program, and the only way to do it was to bring them to the table with these sanctions. And now that they're at the table, let's finish the deal is the message essentially
and of course,
from the White House.
That people like Marco Rubio and Tom Cotton and some of the others have to answer is, well, if you're going to try to kill this deal, or if you think this deal has to be attached to all of these other things, all these other amendments, look, what's your alternative here? If this is not how you want to deal with the Iran program, how would you propose we do it? With increasing the sanctions that we've had on this country for years that hasn't changed their behavior, under which they've only expanded their nuclear program? Like, what are you going to do?
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, Tom Cotton hasn't been, evasive about this at all. He really doesn't want the deal to go through at all. So his motivations are different than Bob Corker's are. Bob Corker says he's open to what the final deal would look like. He's not necessarily saying that he's trying to kill the deal, whereas someone like Tom Cotton is fine with everything falling apart at this point because he thinks a better deal could be had. Essentially, the Netanyahu argument is shared by many Republicans.
And where are they on this deal? They have until June 31st or 30th, I believe,
right,
to get all of the kind of technical details in place from the broad framework. There's still areas of great disagreement.
Right.
When do the sanctions come off?
Exactly.
Where will inspectors be able to go? Are they getting closer on this? Is this going to happen?
I think we're going to have the same situation that we had in late March, early April, where people are kind of posturing in public right up until the deadline, and you'll have the age-old expression, nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to. But what I will say is, on this particular bill, it's time-sensitive, right? Like, the idea is to have this in place while they're still negotiating. So every day of delay, people say this bill would strengthen the United States' negotiating posture because it would show that Congress is going to vote at some point on this. So every day that Congress doesn't get its act together on this bill is another day that Iran is negotiating with the president, not just with the president, not with the Congress as well.
Do you think we would be in a different place if this negotiation it was in its final stages a year ago or a year and a half ago, where it wasn't kind of filled with this 2016 energy?
Yeah, it's possible, but I would think the politics would just seep into it in a different way. If there was a midterm election right around the corner, for example, you could see people trying to hurt Democratic incumbents, if we were talking 2014, make them take tough votes. Maybe the Israel vote would be an even bigger push by the Republican leadership.
Yeah, it's just that when it becomes a referendum on Obama's entire foreign policy, it's very hard for people like Bob Corker, who's been reasonable in this debate, to bring more Republicans along and say, guys, let's think about this rationally, I think, because the politics just gets in the way. All right, 866-557-7377. Burgess Everett is a congressional reporter for Politico. He's going to join us on the other side of this break.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use, which is a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is the Bill Press Show.
49 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show for this Friday, May 1st, 2015. Back here with Burgess Everett, congressional reporter for Politico. Now, during the break, Peter Ogburn, our esteemed executive producer, came across an interesting story about a gun found
a couple of guns
on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, this comes out of roll call by Hannah Hess.
Give her a shout out. She's been killing this beat.
Yeah, this is amazing. This is an amazing story.
Pun intended. Yeah.
I'm going to read straight from her story. When a member of the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's security detail left his Glock and magazine stuffed in the toilet seat cover holder of a Capitol Visitor Center bathroom stall, a CVC worker found the gun, according to a source familiar with the incident on January 29th. Then, a 7 or 8-year-old child visiting the Capitol with his parents found the next loaded Glock lost by a dignitary protection officer, according to the source. A member of the security detail for John Boehner allegedly left the firearm in the bathroom of the Speaker's suite on March 24th. A third Glock was found on the night of April 16th by a janitor cleaning up the Capitol Police Headquarters building on D Street Northeast. The weapon was left in plain sight. And we're going to tweet out a link at BP Show. There's a photo of the Glock that was left in the bathroom stall, where someone had just like shoved it into the little toilet cover, little paper
toilet
holder
towel
situation,
holder.
and just like shoved it in there awkwardly, and apparently just walked away without it.
3 guns found.
Dude, I wouldn't leave my phone there, and they're leaving Glocks. It's crazy.
And these are professional gun handlers.
That's right.
The CVC one is probably the most troubling because tourists are really, there's very strict rules about what tourists can bring into the Capitol. You can't have a pin, you can't have nail clippers, you can't have liquid, you can't have food, you can't have any of these things. And then, you know, you go to the bathroom in the visitor center, which is where the tourists use the bathroom, and you find a gun. I mean, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the strict security measures.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean,
that's flat out insane.
It's like when professional law enforcement officials can't handle their guns properly, and they're found by children in the visitor center where children are, you know. Why are we then surprised when, you know, every day you open some local newspaper and someone's cleaning their gun and the gun goes off and it shoots a kid or it kills a kid or a kid uses a gun that he found in his house to shoot their sibling? I mean, this happens every day.
It's wild.
This happens every day.
Yeah.
I mean, to stuff a gun into, I didn't even know what those things were called, a toilet towel holder. The thing you put on the seat when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's where you stuff your gun and leave it there.
Apparently.
And, like, how do you not realize that, too? I mean, how long? I wonder what the gap is between when he left it and when it was found.
That's a very good point.
He went the rest of his day without his gun and being like, what?
Feels like I'm
Like,
missing
was this
something.
not reported to
What am I
anybody?
missing? No, I got my phone.
You got my phone. I mean,
I got my keys.
Yeah.
Nope, all good.
What else do I need? I mean, my goodness.
It's crazy, right?
This is why we need Bernie Sanders to put an end to these kinds of shenanigans and crack down.
That's a good segue.
Grandpa Bernie is gonna make.
I told you not to call him Grandpa.
Well, listen, this is the charm he has.
I like the person who tweeted and said that, because I defended you.
Thank you.
I said clearly Grandpa is a term of endearment, and someone said he's Grandpa the way that like Obi-Wan Kenobi was.
You know, I came in this morning, and the first thing I asked Peter is, do you think it's offensive if I call Bernie Sanders Grandpa Sanders?
And I said yes.
And he said no, and I opened the entire show with that. And people are like up in arms that I don't call Hillary Grandma. I will. Grandma Hillary, okay? Grandma Hillary, Grandpa Sanders. I mean, these folks, you know, maybe we want younger leaders. Maybe that's what we're saying.
Well, you know, Sanders does have that grandfatherly charm for sure.
Exactly,
you know?
and it's going to help him with voters.
But it's not back in the day, you know, I had to walk 10 miles. It was back in the day the middle class had a chance.
That's right. Much more impactful
The middle
than real.
class got a fair shake.
All right, Burgess Everett, congressional reporter for Politico. Thank you for being with us. We're at 866-557-7377 for this Friday, May 1st, 2015 on the Bill Press Show. I'm Igor Volsky. Stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption.
They're annoying.
We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
Would you like it back?
what do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like it back?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone...
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, 57 minutes after the hour on this Friday, May 1st, 2015, a cap to a super busy week. And we kind of forget, lost in all the coverage, I think, of Baltimore, in some ways a good thing, was the Supreme Court oral arguments for marriage equality on Tuesday. When I was back here and we were talking about what does it all mean for the LGBT movement in general, I went to the steps of the Supreme Court to talk to some of the people there. I intended to discuss kind of the implications of marriage with opponents of marriage equality to figure out why people still oppose equal marriage rights for gay and lesbian people. But what I found really shocked me. There were no kind of rational conservative opponents of marriage. There were just crazy Westboro church people, and the steps of the Supreme Court were just overrun with supporters of people who've been married or have been together for decades and saying, this is finally happening in America. We will finally be treated equally. After 20, 30 years together, we can be married everywhere in the United States. It was a big, big day.
This is The Bill Press Show.
West here reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
scientists in particular try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now. We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania. Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water. Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
please. Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, hour 3 of The Bill Press Show on this Friday, May 1st, 2015. Good morning to you, and welcome to the end of a very long week. Happy to be with you. Igor Volsky here of Think Progress.
You're doing a great job, Igor.
Thank you, Peter Ogburn, executive producer. Elisa Murphy on
Hey,
the
good
board.
morning.
Alicia Cruz taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS or 866-557-7377. And Cyprian Bolden making us look oh so good on our video stream at youtube.com/TawkrTV. Now, I want to switch gears a bit. We've been talking about Bernie Sanders and the 2016 race and what it all means for the contest ahead, but we don't want to lose sight of what's been happening in Baltimore this past week and why it's happening. And one of the most interesting and least discussed aspects of this entire crisis, if you will, is how and why are thousands of people on the street demanding not only justice for Freddie Gray, but also an end to the economic and social obstacles that have created such deep poverty in Baltimore, that has led to such incredible job erosion in Baltimore. And my next guest writes, Baltimore's ghettos was not created by private discrimination, income differences, personal preferences, or demographic trends, but by purposeful action of government in violation of the 5th, 13th, and 14th Amendments. These constitutional violations have never been remedied, and we are paying the price in the violence we saw this week. We are paying the price in the violence we saw this week. Richard Rothstein is a research associate for the Economic Policy Institute. He joins us on the phone from Berkeley, California. Richard, good morning.
Good morning.
I have to say, this was so important to me when I saw it online, because a lot of people, when talking about some of the causes of what's happening in Baltimore, think about it in just the way you lay out, that it's private discrimination, that it's income differences, that it's personal preferences of white people. But you point out in this article the fruits of government-sponsored segregation, that no. This was and continues to be a structured legal policies of laws in place that have created the kinds of divisions and disparities we're seeing now. Why don't you take us through some of the history, starting in 1910 in Baltimore, when a black Yale Law School graduate tried to purchase a house in a previously all-white neighborhood. How did the community react?
Well, upon this attempt of this graduate to purchase a home in a middle-class neighborhood, Baltimore adopted an ordinance prohibiting African Americans from living in white neighborhoods, and that ordinance was enforced for another almost a decade. The Supreme Court then found the ordinance unconstitutional, not because it violated African Americans' rights, but because it violated the rights of property owners to sell to whomever they wished. And the mayor of Baltimore then established a committee on segregation.
Yeah, a committee on segregation. Let's just, and this was in 1910. 1925, somewhere in the 1920s, yes?
Yes, it was,
The mid-1920s, in Baltimore, we had an official city-sanctioned committee on segregation, and it did what, Richard?
Well, and let me just say, I want to say now that Baltimore was not unique in this respect. The events I'm describing to you in Baltimore took place in every city in the country in one form or another, very similar events. In Baltimore, the Committee on Segregation did several things. One is building inspectors and health inspectors were expected to not only enforce the building and health codes, but to ensure that no homes in white neighborhoods were sold to African Americans and that owners were warned against selling homes to non-whites. The other thing that the Committee on Segregation did was it promoted throughout the white areas in Baltimore, the adoption of restrictive covenants. That's language in deeds prohibiting the owner from selling to a non-white family and giving other neighbors the right in state court to enforce those deeds so that if anybody did sell a home to an African American, the neighbors could go to court to have the African American evicted. And their neighborhood associations voted by the Committee on Segregation. The Committee on Segregation was headed by the city solicitor, that is the state's attorney in Baltimore. So this was not a private action. This was state-sponsored segregation.
And it wasn't just the city of Baltimore, it was also the federal government through the Federal Housing Administration, which refused to insure black mortgages and would not provide African Americans with mortgages to be able to purchase homes in certain neighborhoods.
Yes, this went on through the 1950s. The Federal Housing Administration financed the suburbanization of the United States all across the country. All of the well-known suburbs that the large subdivisions were created, places like Levittown in New York or Daly City south of San Francisco, and hundreds of subdivisions like that in between. Builders like Levitt in Levittown got concessionary bank loans, that is subsidized bank loans, because the federal government, the Federal Housing Administration, insured those bank loans for construction of subdivisions on condition that no homes in those subdivisions be sold to African Americans.
Wow.
That's why Levittown was an all-white development.
Now, what was, Richard, if I can interrupt you, how was this framed at the time? I mean, was this literally the policy on paper that these homes cannot go to African Americans, or was there some euphemism there that was used to prevent this?
No, there was no euphemism involved. The rationale was that property values would not be high if homes were sold to African Americans, and the Federal Housing Administration would not insure loans to builders to build subdivisions if they risked the value of those subdivisions by selling to African Americans. But there was no euphemism involved. This was all in the manuals of the Federal Housing Administration that were used by assessors to appraisers to appraise the value of developments when applications were made for these loans. And it continued on until explicitly, without euphemism, until about 1950. For a few years after 1950, euphemisms were used. But the policy continued up until 1960, the early 1960s, when President Kennedy finally issued an order for the first time saying that federal agencies could not discriminate in their housing programs on the basis of race. But that didn't happen until the early 1960s. And by that time, all white subdivisions had been built encircling Baltimore and every other city in the country.
And as a result... And as a result of these policies, you had African Americans paying much higher rents, buying homes on installments, fearing that if they miss a payment, they can lose those homes because of how those contracts were structured. We get into the 1960s where this overt policy is prohibited. But even if we fast forward to today and think just a couple of years ago with the subprime mortgage scandal, I mean, it's not too long ago when banks like Wells Fargo Bank and others were targeting African Americans in a very similar way.
Yes, and these banks are, of course, they're private banks, but they are very, very heavily regulated and supervised. Inspectors from the Federal Reserve Board, from the controller of the currency, when we had the Office of Thrift Supervision, are examining every loan that banks make, and they were well aware of these practices. Regulatory agencies testified, their officers testified before Congress that they were aware of these practices. So this was a collaborative effort of federal regulatory agencies and banks, first to deny mortgages to individual African Americans, and then later to target subprime loans, exploitative loans with exploding interest rates and prohibitive prepayment penalties. In Baltimore, it was found and testified to that Wells Fargo had a special unit made up of African American employees who were assigned to target black churches to market refinancing at subprime with subprime exploitative loans. They had no similar agency unit in the bank for going to white churches to try to market subprime loans. This is something that was specifically targeted to African Americans. The result was, of course, we had a foreclosure crisis that took place once these exploding interest rates actually exploded, and many African Americans who had finally managed to move to single-family homes and outside the ghetto were forced back into the ghetto when they lost their homes. So this is a policy that continues.
Yeah, and it continues to today. You write that today you have claims that the federal housing subsidy policies are still disproportionately directing low-income black families to segregated neighborhoods and away from middle-class suburbs. How can this still be happening?
Well, we have two programs that the federal government operates in the housing field today. One of them is run by the Department of Treasury. It's called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and it gives tax credits to developers to build developments that include low and moderate income housing units, not just for the very poor. Those low-income housing tax credit developments are disproportionately located in already segregated, that is, in low-income and minority neighborhoods. And the federal government actually encourages that because the provisions of the law permit communities to reject applications of developers to place those developments in their communities, and so segregated communities reject those developments, and the states then approve the use of these tax credits in low-income and segregated minority communities. The other program that the federal government operates is called the Section 8 Housing Voucher Program, and this is a program for low-income families, for poor families, that give them subsidies so that they can rent market-rate apartments. And Section 8 housing vouchers are also disproportionately used in segregated low-income minority neighborhoods, so they perpetuate segregation. In Baltimore, actually, there was a lawsuit in which the City of Baltimore and the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development just a few years ago were found guilty of directing Section 8 housing voucher recipients to ghetto neighborhoods, and a settlement was reached in which, in Baltimore, these voucher holders were given counseling and support services to move to high-opportunity neighborhoods, to middle-class neighborhoods. That program has been very successful, but it's a token program, and it hasn't done much to in quantitative terms to diminish the size of the ghetto and the concentration of low-income black families in ghettos. And, of course, it doesn't apply anywhere else in the country. So throughout the country, these two federal programs are reinforcing segregation rather than demolishing it.
So when we watch the images on television of people rioting, setting stores ablaze, many more people trying to calmly protest, as they will again this weekend, demanding that some of these policies be put to an end, and talking about the lack of opportunity they face in Baltimore for themselves and for their children who on Monday kind of sparked a lot of the unrest. Richard, how much are these policies responsible, do you think?
Hello? Hello, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
How much are the policies you're discussing responsible for some of the devastation and plight that you hear people on television from Baltimore talking about as their grievance in this uprising?
Well, ultimately, they're completely responsible. Look, let me go back to the example I gave before. In the early 1950s, suburban developments were built that were affordable to low and working-class families returning war veterans from World War II. I use the example of Levittown because that's probably well known to your listeners. At that time, homes in Levittown could be purchased for about $10,000, roughly 2.5 times national median income. White working-class families, not middle-class families, but working-class families bought those homes. Returning war veterans bought those homes. The homes appreciated in value. They were, in today's dollars, that the price was probably about $125,000, about 2.5 times national median income, as I said. Today, those homes sell for $500,000, over 7 times national median income. Telling black families today, as we do in the Fair Housing Act, that they now have a right to buy homes in suburbs which have now appreciated to the point that they're unaffordable for working class and even middle class families is not a significant right. The result is that white families who bought into those subdivisions when the black families were prohibited from doing so gained over the course of the 20th century $400,000 in equity, which they used to send their children to college. Their children sent their children to college. Meanwhile, African Americans in exactly the same position as the whites, except for this prohibition, were living in ghettos, in apartments with high rents because their housing supply was so restricted.
All right, Richard, listen. We're coming up against the break. Can you hold for the next segment? Because I want to get into some of the solutions here. Richard Rothstein, Research Associate for Economic Policy Institute. His article is titled, well, I had it here somewhere, From Ferguson to Baltimore, The Fruits of Government-Sponsored Segregation. Go read it now. We'll be back with Richard on the other side of the break.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at
a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
People like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water. Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it. Ban fracking now. Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show continues for this Friday, May 1st, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress, and we're talking with Richard Rothstein. He's the research associate for the Economic Policy Institute and the author of From Ferguson to Baltimore, The Fruits of Government-Sponsored Segregation. That's right, government-sponsored policies that kept African Americans from housing for many, many years and have created, in many respects, the conditions, the inequality, the poverty that you see plaguing Baltimore today, and that has in many ways led to the uprising we've seen this past week. Now, Richard, I hear a lot of presidential candidates talk about changing the way we police our neighborhoods, reforming our criminal justice system. Hillary just gave a major speech on this on Wednesday, but a lot less attention has been focused on the housing aspect and how to undo some of the damage that has been done with these policies. If you were advising any of the 2016 contenders, what do you say to them in terms of what they focus on to prevent these kinds of policies and to correct them, most importantly?
Well, certainly the proposals to reform... Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, quickly.
Certainly the proposals to reform the way we police ghetto communities are important, and nobody should minimize them. When you lock low-income minority people away from opportunity in segregated neighborhoods, there are going to be...
All right, Richard, we got to go. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back. The Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, 33 minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show for this Friday, May 1st, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky from Think Progress, moving into what will likely be my most favorite segment here on the program. I've done this show, for 2.5 years with you guys?
You're a veteran.
And finally, we've come to the part of my career where I get to eat delicious biscuits live on air. I'm joined here by Chef Douglas Alexander of Art and Soul Restaurant and Genevieve O'Sullivan of Sona Creamery and Wine Bar. And they have brought with them 3 delicious-looking biscuits and 2 dip-like things that they will explain that I don't quite understand yet. And I've been saying, I'm Russian. We don't eat really biscuits. We never grew up with biscuits in my family. So I don't understand them, but you do, so which is why you're here. So tell me a bit about why you're here with the biscuits and why biscuits.
Why biscuits? Well, we're going to be celebrating our 2nd annual Biscuit Bash at Art and Soul Wednesday, the 6th of May. Last year it was our patio launch. We invited different competitors. We said, bring your best biscuit. Nobody just brought a biscuit. It was biscuits with eggs, biscuits with bacon, biscuits with pork belly, pulled pork, all sorts of things. And our winner was Hamilton Johnson of Vidalia, and he'll be coming back to try to win a 2nd title, and one of his competitors will be Genevieve here.
Ooh, yes, this is the biscuit competition. It's on Wednesday, May 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Art and Soul Restaurant patio. Tickets are $50 and must be purchased on Eventbrite. Okay, so you're competing this year. Tell me what's your strategy?
Well, so I've been making scones and biscuits at Sona because I've been baking since I was 10. Ooh. So I keep putting air quotes around chefs. There's 9 chefs competing because I'm the one exception to that. I'm honored to be up there with everybody. I will say I'm feeling a little underdog-ish, but my whole strategy is to promote DC.
Yes.
Which means there will be our cheese that we're making in the biscuit, on the biscuit, and everything on my biscuit is going to be produced in the district.
Oh,
so that's my
a local
strategy.
biscuit.
It's a local biscuit.
Now, let's break into this because here they are teasing me these 3 delicious biscuits. We have 3 biscuits on a cutting board. And what are the 2 sauces? I don't know. What are these?
This is a mixed berry jam, and that's with butter.
Oh, Okay, so now are all these biscuits the same?
Yes, they are.
They are. Okay, so I'm going to take one biscuit. Guys, be jealous in there in the control room.
We are.
I'm taking a biscuit.
Save some crumbs.
I am cutting it. Ooh, oh, this is so flaky. Oh, my. Okay, now should I put the jam or the butter on it, do you think?
That's personal preference.
That's personal.
I'm a butter guy myself.
You're a butter guy, Jen?
I would say try it both ways.
Okay, well, let me start with the
always
butter.
butter.
Here,
Always butter.
Here, I'm
Always
just going to
butter.
put a little bit. There's so much. I'm going to have, oh, man. Been dreaming about this. Okay, here we go. Tasting it now. That is good. That is really good. It is so flaky.
And our host, Doug, this is the nice part, is he's hosting us, and he's probably the nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's not even competing, and he's the one who brought these beautiful biscuits for you.
Doug, you made these for me?
I'm going to lie and
And
say
me
I made
only?
them. No, I didn't make them. I've got a terrific kitchen staff, and
Oh, my
they
God.
made these for me this morning.
Okay. So these are fresh.
Yes.
These are. Now I'm putting the berries on because, I need to try everything here. Hold up here. Oh my God. This is amazing. Okay, here's the background, okay? The last biscuit I had, I was telling you guys during the break, was at, where did I say? The
Cracker Barrel?
Cracker Barrel, my first time there. Disgusting, okay? The other biscuits I had were from Indiana, where Brian is from. They're okay. But this is like a different level of biscuit. This is a different world of biscuit. This I can eat. This is like, a lot of time you have a biscuit, and it's like too fatty or too butter, or like too heavy. But this is just right. This is like a perfect biscuit. This is amazing. This you can eat. So if you go to this competition at the Art and Soul restaurant on May 6th from 6 to 8, you can eat like different kinds of biscuits of this variation. Can you eat them if you go?
Of course. Yeah.
So that's the $50. So you pay $50 at Eventbrite. You go to this competition May 6th, 6 to 8 p.m. And the people, do they make the biscuits there, or do they bring the biscuits?
Mostly the competitors. The competitors will all be baking in their own facility and bringing them over. Everyone will have their own station set up. You'll be able to walk around, taste.
So it's like Top Chef.
Yeah, taste everyone's wares and then vote on it. So it's the people who are there who decide who's the champion.
And what does the winner get?
Bragging rights.
I was going to say ownership over like Biscuit Bash for a year.
Yeah,
Obviously, Vidalia's coming back to
They're
represent,
coming back
right?
to try it again.
So,
Jen, how good are your chances of winning? What would you say your odds are of winning the Biscuit Bash?
like I said, I'm feeling a little bit of the underdog just because, I'm going to be sitting with some pretty interesting company, including one of DC's newest biscuit makers, which is Mason-Dixon Biscuit Company. Their new business, and all they do is biscuits. So that's pretty intimidating. But I'm really excited. We're going to be making, each of us is going to be making about 300 bites for all of the people, because they've opened, it's sold out, and then they opened up part of the restaurant, more of the restaurant, just so more people could participate, because it's getting like super popular.
No, Jen, be honest. As you're preparing for this competition and you're practicing making these biscuits, how many burned biscuits did you make?
No burned biscuits, but I have to tell you, my staff, my serving staff, and everybody who works at Sona has had to sacrifice by eating biscuits and trying them,
rough.
and they've been really upset about that.
It's for the greater good.
Yes, they're just.
Well, that's why I was
horribly-
asking, because I was wondering if you had any extra biscuits you would want to give to me.
Well, if you feel like swinging by over the next couple days, I guarantee you that I'm going to be playing with a couple more things. So you're more than welcome, and I'm just downstairs from you. So
what kind of cheese are you thinking of using?
we're going to be using our house-made Chev, our fresh goat cheese that we make.
Yummy.
Yeah, it's going to be in and on. So it gives it. I actually kind of love the little bite it gives the biscuit. So.
Now, so your recipe, you're still experimenting. You haven't locked down the recipe you're pulling out on May 6th.
I kind of have, but there's always room for improvement, and because, like I said, because I'm going in against some pretty heavy hitters, I want to make sure that it's exactly where I want it by the time I get there, which means that, it's ratios. It's like you can put too much butter, frighteningly enough, into biscuits. But the coolest part about this, I think my favorite part about this, is the fact that all the proceeds benefit No Kid Hungry.
Oh, yes.
Which is a charity that my husband, Conan, and I, since before we opened Sona, have been working with. We've we've done, I think this is going to be somewhere around our 7th or 8th No Kid Hungry event, and we've been open about 15 months. So we're pretty psyched that we get to support a really good cause.
Delicious biscuits and a good cause. That's Wednesday, May 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Art and Soul restaurant patio. Now, it says here on my sheet here that there's going to be mixologist. He will mix creative cocktails. There will be refreshing beers, dessert, and a DJ for entertainment.
Yeah, we've really pulled
Could this get any better?
We pulled out all the stops here. So one of our bartenders, mixologist, Ronald Flores, he's going to be putting together one of his cocktails. He's won a few different events around the city. He's quite good. We've paired with Hardywood Park from Richmond. They're going to set up a special cask of IPA for us. I believe it's going to have some chilies and honey in the cask.
Ooh.
It's going to be pretty nice. DJ Nicola, she's done some events for us, and she's going to be spinning the tunes.
I mean, we should have really invited all these people to on the program, Lisa.
Yeah, but Chef Douglas, can you tell us what really makes, from your perspective, a really good biscuit?
For me, it's got to be the texture. It's got to be nice and flaky. It should separate easily. It shouldn't need to be cut. And you get that from...
I just separated this very easily.
You did. And you get that from cooking it at the right temperature and having the fat not melt out. So, like, for me at home, I use butter that I've frozen and grated so that the butter, as it turns to steam, everybody rises nice, separates easily.
So for the home cook, how long do you think it would take to master the biscuit? Like, for me to make something like this, how long, how many... Like, in terms of, would it take 2 hours or 3 hours for a set of biscuits, and then to perfect it over time, how long do you think?
Well, you could have biscuits in 45 minutes. Perfection of biscuit in
a
eternity.
lifetime.
I was going to say your entire life.
Wow. I
And
mean,
it's not even about just the recipe either. It's about how much you handle the dough. And that's my
Absolutely.
biggest thing is overhandled dough. People, that's when you get that tough biscuit a lot of times, and it's the hardest thing to teach, because everybody will say, like, I want your recipe, and I'm like, I'm happy to give it to you, but it's less about that, because there's a million biscuit recipes, and a lot of them are really great, but it's about how much you play. You really can't touch the dough that much.
No, it's not like kneading bread. It's getting everything mixed, maybe 3 folds, punch it out, 3 more folds with what is left, and that's it. And any more handling than that, you're going to get something really dense.
so that's the secret.
That is the secret. Do
Wow.
not handle your dough too much.
Wow. Well, Chef Douglas Alexander of Art and Soul Restaurant and Genevieve O'Sullivan of Sona Cream and Wine Bar. Guys, thank you so much. These are delicious.
Thank you.
I'm taking both of them with me.
You should.
So don't take them with you. Wednesday, May 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. That's where you can go to this competition at the Art and Soul Restaurant patio. Tickets are $50 and must be purchased at Eventbrite, and it's all going to a very, very, very good cause and a delicious time, I promise you. Back in a moment here on The Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Thank you for leaving me some biscuits, man. Yo, we're on. Wake up. We're on.
Whoa, the Bill.
Are you not plugged in?
The Bill Press Show. Oh my goodness.
That's what biscuits will do to you.
I have the biscuits. I wasn't plugged in. I ate the biscuits and now I'm half asleep.
I'm eating the biscuits and now I had to wake you up.
Oh
Come
my
on,
goodness.
You eat a biscuit, you go into like a little biscuit coma.
Yeah, this is why I've never done this before, because you know I have food and then it all
Thank
goes
goodness
out
we
the
didn't do
roof.
alcohol today.
Oh God, could you imagine?
Grief.
It's like, could this get any better? Yeah, Chef Douglas Alexander and Genevieve Sullivan here last segment with these biscuits, and it just took me by storm.
Here's the thing.
Took me by storm.
I am a bit of a biscuit snob.
Oh no!
Grew up in South Carolina.
You're a snob? I would have never guessed.
It comes through. I'm a biscuit snob, and I have yet to find like the perfect biscuit in DC. This comes really close. This is so good.
This is so good.
This is a great biscuit.
And for me, so
I'm sorry you guys didn't get to have any of them.
Yeah, here we should hold them up or something.
We got a shot of it. See? Look at those biscuit bombs.
Nice golden biscuits.
I'm sorry you didn't get any, Elisa.
I shall be in there at some point.
I don't think the biscuits will, though.
See, for me, though, I feel kind of bad about it, because for me, as a biscuit novice, to start at the very top, the only way you can go is down.
This is the best biscuit I've ever had in DC.
It can only get worse.
This is the best biscuit I've had in DC. I'll say that.
Wow, you've like ruined it. You've ruined the whole biscuit situation.
I'm gonna have another one while you do.
But Igor, you didn't tell them about your Russian cake. Oh, and we all know how good that was.
My Russian cake. That's really my only baking accomplishment. My Russian shokoladny Spartak.
Oh, yeah.
That I make, that I brought here
I didn't
once
get any of that.
before.
It's like seven layers or something.
It's 7
it was really
layers
involved.
With cream cheese based filling. It was very delicious.
I spilled
jam
all over.
What are you doing?
I got jam all over myself.
Control it, please. Control the biscuit.
Shut
My
up,
goodness. Yeah. Whew. Well, listen, I don't know how we transition from the biscuits, except maybe to say that if you eat too many of these biscuits, and the Supreme Court rules against Obamacare this coming June, and you lose your health care subsidies, and you need health care because you ate too many of the biscuits, you may be in trouble. That's what I'm going to say. Because
nicely done
the
there.
GOP, thank you. The GOP, believe it or not, are still talking, thinking, considering about what they're going to do if the court decides to eliminate, invalidate as unconstitutional the subsidies that are being provided to federally run healthcare exchanges. And we see this story literally every other month that Republicans are talking about it, they're considering doing this or that, and then nothing of real substance comes out. And here we have an AP story, GOP, a shocking headline, GOP divided as Supreme Court ruling on healthcare law nears. Really? Divided. This is new. This is news. This is what passes for news at the AP, that the GOP since 2009, so what, 6 years, have been divided on healthcare. That's like the current state of affairs.
Shock.
I mean, that's like saying Barack Obama's still president on May 1st, 2015. I mean, seriously. But that's, it's a real missed opportunity here. It's a real missed opportunity, I think, for them and for the country to have a real conversation. Because you did Obamacare, you expanded healthcare coverage, but you're not done. It's, as Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa used to say, it's a starter home that you build and build and build on to improve it or to plug holes that aren't necessarily working. Republicans aren't necessarily interested in moving in that direction, but the way you grow and build a country and develop a policy is if you start with the status quo as Obamacare and you figure out not how to go backwards to peel off that law, but how to move forward with the policy you have and, maybe change it or tweak it if things aren't working, but move in a direction of ultimately you want people one way or another to have access to health care, not just to undo an accomplishment of a president you don't agree with.
Right. No,
And
good point.
it's going to be interesting to see, frankly, what Hillary Clinton does with Obamacare, how Bernie Sanders handles it, someone who supports a kind of a Medicare for all system, a single payer system, certainly not what we have in the healthcare law. But I'm very, very eager to see how the Democratic Party talks about, messages, and most importantly, legislates on Obamacare and where we're going to be moving forward. Because for me, you did the access, which is very important. Millions of people now have health care coverage. You're going to get it up to some 30 million over the 10-year window. But the challenge is cost. That's where the focus was in the ACA in many respects, and that's a good thing. But you gotta do more. You always gotta do more. And if Republicans have real ideas and Democrats have real ideas, I mean, that's a good start. But I haven't seen any. No. Frankly, I haven't really seen any from Hillary. I mean, I guess there's time, but I certainly haven't seen anything from the GOP. So this headline, GOP divided as Supreme Court ruling on healthcare law. Really? Wake me up when they have a plan of any kind to actually do something, please. Ridiculous. The biscuits, they brought it out in me.
You need to have a biscuit.
Healthcare rage. Yeah, I'll have another one during the break. We'll be back on the other side. I'm Igor Volsky. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violence. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
Your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 57 minutes after the hour. Very plugged in. After my biscuit, I don't know what to eat next.
You got
because
biscuit brain.
I don't know what would compete with the biscuit.
You got biscuit brain.
What am I going to have for lunch? Is Chef Doug available for lunch? Maybe I'll go to Art and Soul restaurant.
They do lunch over there.
And have my lunch over there because I can't. My day can't get worse. It has to only get better. To find out what to. Thanks a lot, biscuit guys. Great. What am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to have for dinner? What am I going to do? Oh, man. We learned a lot today on the Bill Press Show.
Today.
Biscuits are delicious. Legal segregation in Baltimore is horrible.
Yes.
And Bernie Sanders, Bill Press audience loves Grandpa Bernie. All right, I'm Igor Volsky for this Friday, May 1st, 2015. A pleasure being with you. I'll see you soon here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.